Hello everyone, this is Andre again. Now you should be able to see me as well. Hello. And now continues the dreadful journey of building the wedding site on GridSum and actually having it dynamic. So I used to do .NET. Now I measure in majority of my time I do Vue.js because it's just quite simple for people that have never seen JavaScript frameworks. And in case you're new to this whole Twitch series, I assume there's going to be just one Twitch, right? One single stream for 1.5 hours with Michael. Michael has been here as a guest for the first Twitch. That was a week ago. And in 1.5 hours, we were able to touch a bit on content modeling. He helped me to set up some of my content types, but the rest I had to do myself. And this is actually fourth stream. So you see that I underestimated the time this would take me. And still I don't have even the first component ready, but that probably comes from my inexperience, not that it would take that long. So you see I already have both of these parts running. First part is actually the GridSum site. That's here, that's running on localhost 8080. Let's show you that. There it was. Localhost 8080, Michael's website, and all the way down here there is the form. So this is the form that I'm trying to make dynamic. Otherwise, the whole website is built on GridSum. Currently, a lot of this content is static, including these timeline items. Although for these items, I already have the content in Headless CMS, but I still have yet to implement the way how it's gonna come here into this page. But this is gonna be an easy case. That's gonna take me a few minutes. What's really challenge here is this little form that actually is displayed or is not displayed based on what I have for that particular invitee for Michael in the Headless CMS. And in case the accommodation is not yet resolved, then he's gonna see this kind of form where he says, he tells me actually if he needs accommodation, if he's interested in accommodation somewhere around the event, or he wants to sleep in a tent. So those are the three options. And for those options, I actually have a project in the Headless CMS. Now let me switch to the right project. So I'm not showing you something that I don't mean to. So the right project is right here. Okay. So here in this project, I have Michael Kincaid as an invitee, and inside here, there is his accommodation object. So in this object, you can see that he is currently not interested in accommodation. So that's exactly what I see here on the website. And I actually see his option for not interested selected in the form. Now what I want to do is, what I've been doing the last Twitch is actually when he clicks on one of these items, that information needs to go back into the Headless CMS. So I was working on a netlify function, netlify serverless function that would take the data and store it in here, in this accommodation object. And it was almost working last time. So this is the GridSum implementation. Let me open a new code window and open the right folder here. So I'm looking for the netlify project. So this is actually what I did the last time. You see that this is an action serverless function, and that action works, or that serverless function works with both delivery and content management API. And first, it actually retrieves the ID of the item. So this is the way how we call the function, right? Last time I used Postman to do the request, so I'm just gonna start it again. I hope that the request will still be there, so I don't have to do it again. And the request is gonna be a post request with the data of the form. So the data of the form is whatever he clicks on here on the website, right? So that's gonna be quite simple. Right, so this is this is the request. It goes to netlify function action. Hope this is visible, guys. Netlify function action. There is as a get parameter in the query string, there is an ID. This is the ID of the invitee. So this is Michael's ID. And as a body, there is an option. That's the name of the value, or this is the value of the radio button that was selected. And these two are the remaining two fields from the browser. So you see here, there is the number of persons, and there is a note here. So I'm just going to be taking all these three data, and I'm going to be storing those in the accommodation object. And last time I almost finished it because here I'm getting the ID. Here I'm just getting the invitee, because I do have an ID of the invitee, but I do need something a bit different. I need to get the accommodation object from the invitee content item. And if that object actually doesn't exist, or if the content item hole doesn't exist, I'm just returning 404 as invitee not found, because clearly the ID is wrong in that case. And if I found an invitee content item, in that case, I'm just storing some of the fields that I'm going to need later. But most importantly, I'm looking for accommodation ID. So I'm looking inside the invitee content item. So that's this thing that we're looking at right now. And I'm looking for the accommodation object. And I want to get an ID of that object, or of that nested item, linked item. So you see I'm here getting accommodation ID, which is invitee items accommodation value. So that's the value of the accommodation linked items field. And I'm getting the system ID of the first object, right? In case the object exists. If the object does not exist, I'm going to create it. So that's what I'm doing here with the management client. I'm getting the accommodation data. So this is the data that are coming in through the request. And I'm returning, if it doesn't work, I'm returning 400 if the object is not there. And I'm doing some validation here as well, if all the data are in place and it's actually valid value for those data types. And in case everything is fine, I'm just going to create the object, right? So here you see I'm adding content item. In case the content item doesn't exist, I'm going to create it with the name, code name, and type. And once that's done, I'm actually storing the ID of the newly created item. I'm storing that in the accommodation ID variable. So that actually solves the issue if the content item does not exist. If the content item exists, then I'm getting the accommodation ID somewhere here, I think. Here. So if there is accommodation object, I'm setting that ID here. And once that's done, I'm creating a new language variant. So every content item, so that's like a one-to-n relationship. Every content item can have multiple language versions. I'm using just single language, but still I need to create the language version because there may be different versions added in the future. So in that case, I need to first create the content item and then I can create the language variant. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. And what I tried to do last time as well, to create the content, the language variant for the content item here. But the problem was that I was using here, so it failed last time. It gave me some ugly error. I had no idea what's going on. The problem was that I had here by language ID. And I'm not using the ID of the language, I was using code name, right? So that was the mistake I did last time. So I have to use a code name here, by language code name default, because I'm using the default language. And now this is gonna work. This is gonna create the language variant. But if I run it like I have it here, this is actually a hot reload, so it should work right away without changing anything. This will actually give me another error, which is a very interesting one. But let's show it. So the invocation failed, and it gave me an error. Let's take a look, saying we cannot update published content. If you want to modify the specified content item, variant via the management API, you need to either create a new version of the variant or unpublish it from Kentico content. Now this is understandable message because the invitee, Michael Kincaid's object or content item, was already published. It was already published including the language variant. So right now the content API is complaining that it cannot update the published content because it's published on the live site. So they assume it's not what you want to do. You don't want to directly update published content. Instead, what you need to do, you need to either unpublish it. So either go in here and here it is. So you can either create a new version here, or you can unpublish it. I think that's somewhere around here. Yeah, here it is. So you can click on this button to unpublish the content item, or you can create a new version. In my case, I decided to create a new version. The reason is simple, because the new version will be created by the API whenever someone creates a selection here. And if someone actually puts here not interested, and in 2 months they decide to change that value, they change it to that they are interested in being accommodated in a hotel somewhere, then I will have the history of all the changes, right? Otherwise, the value would just change in the published item, and I wouldn't know about that. I could create some kind of webhook notification to let me know, but they may change it multiple times, and then I wouldn't know the history. So whenever you need to get a history, it's better to always create a new version. Then content will actually keep the history for you, so you wouldn't have to get your hands dirty with any audit logs or something like that. It's going to be handled by content. So how do we do that? If we go back here, so let's keep the code name here, and first we need to check, or we need to create the new language variant in all cases here, because here we already have the content item. So content item is created. We do have its ID. That's the accommodation ID. And here, actually not in all cases, only in cases that there is a language variant. If there is no language variant, it's going to work right away because nothing is published, right? But if there isn't, if there is a language variant already there, and I think it's the case. Let me see where I have it. So if accommodation is null, this is the validation of the object. So here, if accommodation ID is null, that actually means I have to create the content item. So here I'm creating the content item, and if the content item is already created, that means there is already a language variant there. So in that case, instead of creating a content item, we're going to create a new version or a new language variant. And in order to do that, let me just go into the docs of content. And I already found a right page for it. It's called create a new version of language variant. And that's what I want. So here I already have the JavaScript code. Let me just copy this part. And let's put it here. So I'm creating a new version of language variant by item ID. So here I need the accommodation ID. This is the content item ID. So accommodation ID. I don't care about these things. And we want to do by language code name. So I'm not going to make the same mistake as last time. So by language code name, and that code name is default. Okay, now we're not using observable, but we're using toPromise. And we are waiting for that to finish. So just like here. Okay, so now we're creating the new variant. So we should be good at this point. the upsert should now work, because if the content item does not exist, we're going to create it. And then, of course, I can create a new language variant. And if the content item exists, we're creating a new variant. So it should work anyway as well. Okay. So content item is created. And now we can create the language variant, which actually copies the data into content. So if I save this and actually run it, what we should see is a new language variant for this object. Sorry, not this one, but the micros accommodation. Let me actually open that one directly. So you see that it's currently published. And if my functions are running, it seems like they are. So I'm just going to send another request there. Okay, incorrect function response body, but that's fine. That probably means that I'm returning something that I shouldn't. That's probably this or this part, not sure. But your function response needs to have a string body. You gave undefined. Okay, so it seems I returned this and the length variant message was null. But that's something that I can easily fix. But what is more important is that here in content, you see that someone just edited this item with management API, and I need to refresh the page to see the latest changes. So I'm just going to do that. And you see that current version is actually in the workflow step draft, right? So that's the version that I just created using Postman and management API. So published version is still there. I still have the option to change this. You see that I can change here to 4, for example, and so on. And I would have to manually publish it. So that's another task that I need to do here, that once everything is done, I still need to publish the item. And obviously I'm gonna have to check the error code here, because if it gives me 200, then it's gonna go in here as well. So I'm just gonna have to maybe change this. So let me actually check what is the language code. What is the response here? So response can be 400 or 404, but that's for create a new version of language variant. Now I'm looking for content now, and I'm looking for observe a content item language variant actually. Observe a language variant. So let me make this a bit bigger. Okay. Oops, observe language variant. So we're looking at this request, and the response, in case it's okay, looks like this. So there is no error here. But language variant.error code is not null. That's weird. But we could probably check. Let me actually do a console log here to see what we actually get back that we can use. And for now, I'm just gonna put here another code that will actually publish the item, or maybe after this thing, so that we see the result. But we also want to publish it, so I'm just gonna go and look for workflow and publishing, and publish or schedule a language variant. So that's exactly what I want to do. And that's this request. So let's use that. So client publish or schedule language variant by item ID. So we are still looking for the same accommodation ID that we already have from previous calls. And language ID is going to be code name, not an ID. And the code name is default. And I think we don't need the schedule to let me check. So change the workflow step of the specified language variant to published. Scheduling publish language variant does nothing. That's okay. Publish scheduling scheduled to. Okay, so scheduled to. If you don't provide this property, the specified language variant is published immediately. So that's exactly what I want. So I'm just not going to provide this data and do a toPromise instead. And await it, of course. So we're going to await this toPromise, and we're going to log it to see what is going on there. Okay, so when we run the action again, I'm just going to change something here. So let's say this is going to be booked, and let me publish this because we actually expect that item to be published. Okay, so this is published. Now when I run this again, I'm just going to check if this is working. That seems to be working. So let's run this again. Okay, it seems to be working, but we got a 500 response for some case. So the current version is in draft, but we do have the right data. So the item was changed. Now let's see what was the reason it failed. So this is the ID. Your function response must have a string body. You gave undefined. So accommodation ID. That accommodation ID is here. Let me just remove some of the other logs. So we don't need this anymore. Oh, so we were actually here. Observed language variant response. And in the response, we got the status 200. So that's okay, but that's in the debug. I'm looking for the real data here. So raw data and the data. So we don't have the error code there, which is what I would expect. So if the error code is not null, how come this is still matched? Let's try to put here test to see if this is really what's going on. But we still got the 500. Let me see what's the problem with that. Client publisher schedule language variant. toPromise is not a function. Okay. Publisher or schedule language variant is here. That's okay. By item ID. toPromise is, that should be working. Let me check the documentation if I did something wrong here. Publish or schedule. By item ID. By language codename with data. I omitted that. To observable, so that should be fine. Okay, let's try it again. We will see what's going on here. So I'm just going to publish that item again because we expect the item to be published, and try to run it once more. Okay, so that worked, but we got the same error here. But we did not get any issue with the first response, so that seems that the test went well. So this is okay for some reason, but the error code is definitely not set here. So let's check lang variant error code. I'm just interested how come that this is still matched. So I'm just gonna put here console log lang variant error code. Okay, let's try it again and refresh this and publish it. Okay, now let's try to run this again. Okay, so this is the ID, this is the item, and the response with status 500. So it seems it fails right here, but that makes sense actually, because it says that publish or schedule language variant is not a function, or toPromise is not a function. Okay, so let's move these things here. Let's solve one thing at a time. And this should actually, so this thing should actually go here. Because if this fails, it doesn't make sense to push it or publish it. So let's see. Now we should see the code here. Now this is going to fail. So I'm just going to return 200 here. Okay. So let's publish this again. And let's go back and run this. Okay, we got a different error now. So we got the response here, and I did not get the rest of my console logs here. Oh, yeah. So published variant is all the way down here. So let's try it once more. Publish this again. Okay, now here we go. So is error code is undefined, and this condition is true. So yeah, that's true because it's not null, it's undefined. So maybe this will help. Let me see if this is gonna help. Okay, now this works. So is error code is undefined and the condition is false. So if that error code is there, this is going to be fine because then there's always going to be a message in the lang variant. So this is fixed. I can remove these things and we can move further down to the published variant. So we're trying to publish it and it tells me that toPromise is not a function. So let's see the documentation again. I'm just going to publish this so that I don't have to think about it anymore. And let's go back here. I think this should work. So this is using toObservable, but that's always the case. So when we were doing the upsert, I was doing the same thing here with this part. Maybe it doesn't like the fact that I removed the with data. Okay, let's see. So by item ID, by language codename, with data. Let's try to schedule it then. We'll see if that helps. That's way in the future, so we should be fine. And let's try to run it again. Okay, this worked well. So we got a response, request from function, empty content management response, response with status 200. So the status is actually 204. Let's check what that means. Oh, there is no information. Oh, here it is. 204, the specified language variant was published and scheduled. So if that is, we can actually check that. So that's under debug. So we can actually say that if published variant dot debug response and status is not 204, we will return an error. Otherwise, we're just going to return OK. Let's check what's the error message here. So that can be 400 or 404. And that actually returns the error code and the message. So the same way as before. So I can actually make the condition the same. The condition is, oh, where was it? Lang variant error code. So if published variant dot error code is not null, in that case we're going to return the error code and the message. So body is going to be published variant dot message, just like I did it here. And we're fine, I think. Let's take a look here in content UI, and you see that this item is actually scheduled. So what I want to do here is just remove all the data from the with data. Let's see if that's going to work. So Netlify functions are reloaded. I'm going to cancel scheduling here and I'm going to publish it right away. And I'm going to try to run this request again. And it returned OK, so it seems everything is working now. Let's see. So we got the item, it was published correctly, it's not interested, and how many is 2. Now let's try to change this. Let's try to change the option to hotel. How many 2, and there is no node. or let's make a note here. Hello world. So now I don't have to publish anything because it's already published, right? So I can just click send. And we should see the change here. So now he's interested in booking a room. And the note is hello world. So the function seems to be working well. So this is a function that goes from the GridSum site back into content. There has to be one change to the previous function called delivery, because the way how the headless CMS works is that it will return whatever it has cached. So all the content that you're getting using the API comes from the CDNs, from the content delivery networks. And whenever you publish something, a new item, it actually goes through the whole pipeline of distributing that over the CDNs. So in order to get always the fresh content, you have to tell that to the SDK so it can adjust the request for really fresh data. Otherwise, it's going to give you any data that are already on the CDN. So you could end up having an old data returned from here. So the way how we can do it is in here, in the delivery clients. This is actually the delivery function. And here where I'm getting the invitee, I'm just gonna go ahead into the documentation and see what I need to do. So I'm just gonna go back to API reference and go for delivery API. And we're looking for content items. Retrieve a content item. And what I'm looking for is exactly this. So this is the header parameter that I need to use. KC wait for loading new content. And I just want to see what's the sample for JavaScript. Maybe it's here. Nope, not there. All right, maybe there is no example of this. So determines whether the API waits for fetching the content. So I want to use this header. Let's check the GitHub page. Oh, this is .NET. This is SDK for JavaScript. And I actually want to use this header. Let's see full documentation of this. Nothing here. So here we have the option of adding a list of configuration options for delivery client. So let's see if we have something like that here. The resolvers, developer mode, nope. Default language, proxy, secure API, query config retry attempts, collision resolver, retry status codes, nothing like that here. HTTP services, just trying to see if the headers are defined somewhere, but it doesn't seem so. So what I can do, it seems I can actually add the global headers here. So what I can do is define the global headers where I'm creating the delivery client. And that seems to be an array of iHeader. So I'm just trying to find what kind of object I should put there. So we're looking for the SDK. Okay, I'm just gonna use a Google again. Content delivery SDK, JavaScript, custom header. Let's take a look here. And what I actually want to do is I'm just going to copy over the header into Google. Maybe someone already solved this. So there is already an issue about this, that it should be added to the SDK. Let's take a look here. So it seems that this is already done, but I can't find any documentation about this. This is taxonomies, blah, blah, blah. Wait for loading new content. Here we go. So it's in iQuery config. It's in iQuery config, which means I should be able to find this somewhere. Let's try the full documentation. Still not here. Okay. Let's see if we have that here. Nope. It's not here. So the question is how we can use the query filter. Okay, let's go back. Where did I find it? Here. So it's the same as use preview mode. And I think we can find that in the docu. Use preview mode. Let's see. So here we go. So global query config, or we can do it on the query level. So .query config. So .query config. .query config, and not a use preview mode, but we're looking for wait for loading new content. Oh, that was an object, right? Yeah. So wait for loading new content, that would be true. And let's check if this is working now. So this was modified, it's reloading. And now when I refresh this config global headers is not a function. Okay, that's because I left that there. Sorry for that. Now we should be fine. Okay, so now the option is interested in booking a room, how many is 2, and note is hello world. So when I refresh this page, I should see a different option selected, and this is interested in booking a room, which is not a good value here, but this is an issue probably because this is not corresponding to the items that are defined in here in the grid sum implementation. So I'm just gonna have to change that here, process data. So this option being processed, that's not what I want, but I want to check this part. So this option, this is actually direct assignment here. If this, if the option, actually the codename of the option does not correspond to the options or option or the radio button names here that I have here, it's not going to work then. So you see that I'm expecting hotel, but I'm getting interested in booking a room. So that's the code name of the item. So I have to change this. And because I'm actually changing, for the way back, I'm changing it on the serverless function level. So here, I'm gonna need the same the other way around. Or what I could do, I could just match the option names in the grid sum implementation with the code names, which is probably a better idea. Or do it the other way around, but this seems easier. So let me just copy those things. So interested in booking a room instead of hotel. Sleep in a tent instead of tent. And I think not interested stays the same. In that case, I can get rid of this code because it's going to be always the same. And I still need to have the validation here. So if accommodation is interested in booking a room, or accommodation option is sleep in a tent, and I actually want the other way around. So in case this is not true, and this is also not true, and the last condition, accommodation option, is not true, so this is not interested. In that case, we're looking to return status code 400, and the request must provide a valid accommodation object. Otherwise, I think we are fine. And then I don't have to change the delivery because it's gonna work just like that. Let's see if GridSum actually noticed the change. We'll see in a second. So we're interested in booking a room. And I think I have to actually, I have to rebuild it. So I'm gonna do right that. Okay. Now let's see. Okay, still not working. Now let me see. So interested in booking a room. So the label is not going to work, but the value is still wrong here. Maybe I didn't save the file or something. Yeah, I didn't save the file. Sorry. Now it should be fine. The IDs can stay how they are. Let's try it again then. Okay, so when I refresh the page and go down, that option is now selected. I'm interested in accommodation in a hotel. So now when I change something here, that's why I had the watch function here for option. So whenever I change something, option being processed, that's true. And here is a place when I need to call the function. So I'm gonna use the same code as this one. And the URL is gonna be action, not delivery. Invitee ID is gonna stay the same. But what we're looking for is the post method. We're gonna leave course there in the request. But we're also gonna need to provide some data. So I'm just gonna close these things. I'm gonna look here, Vue.js fetch, or it doesn't have to be Vue.js actually. This is just a simple JavaScript. Fetch API post JSON. So here we go. The method is post. The headers should be content type application JSON. So let me copy that. Just gonna put it here in one line. Okay. And then we need to provide the data. So the body will be JSON stringify and the data object. And the data object is actually a mix of these 3 items. So, you know what? I'm just gonna put this one per line so it's visible what I'm doing here. And the data object, that will be a new object here, where I'm just gonna say option is this option. How many is this how many? And node will be this node. Okay, what I could do is I could just return the whole data object, but the thing is I don't need to return these, I would say help properties, help data fields. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I think that now when we get the response, that's gonna be just an OK. So we don't have to do JSON response, but in the response, I think that we only get OK here, nothing else. So we're just gonna check whether it was received OK. So we can await response.json or response.data or something. So we can remove this part. And we're gonna need to do this as well. So this is response equals fetch. And that would be await. So we need to wait till the server responds. So this is await fetch, that's fine. And we don't need to do anything with the response, so we're just gonna await for that and set these options to appropriate values. And I think I've already done this part last time, so now the component should be working. Okay, what's wrong here? Cannot use keyword await outside of an async function. Okay, so this should be async function. Okay, now GridSum is happy. So let's try to refresh this page and go all the way down here. And there is something wrong here. So it's okay, but it's also spinning in the background. So there is some kind of inconsistency here. So if option being processed, then it's visible. Option being processed is false. All in case option changes. Oh, but that should only happen in case it's changed from the front end. So what we could do here, so we're changing that here. Let me see if Google has an answer. So Vue.js watch data first load. Skip watches first change. That's exactly what I want here. So what can we do in this case? Declare a Boolean value which defines if your data fetching is done. By default, you set it to false. Once your fetching logic is done, you can do this done fetching true. Okay, that sounds simple enough. So let's do that. let's introduce a property initialized false. And once actually this happens, sorry, not this, but mounted, once we actually fetch all the data, let's put here, let response, and let's put await here. And then we do this initialized, or we can actually do it here. This initialized is going to be true. Oh, I think I got a lot of requests because it probably went into a loop, which also means this could be in a weird state. Let's see. Okay, this is published, so we're fine. Okay, so this initialized is true once the first request goes through, and I don't really need to do this then, because I don't care about the rest of this function. And here I'm just gonna do a quick fix. So if this initialized is false, then we're just gonna return. All right. Let's see how this is going to work. I'm going to run the netlify functions. Just going to regenerate grid sum as well, just to be on the safe side. And we'll see. Okay. Now the page was reloaded. Let's go to RSVP. And we still get this here. Okay, let me try a different thing then. Request. Options, that's okay. Oh, and there is an issue here with course, because I probably forgot to define the right headers. So this needs to be on the response. So I'm just going to quickly fix that for the return objects that I have here. Just going to add it to all. And put it here as well. Okay, so we should be good in this case, but there is still some kind of issue inside this component. Let's actually output the whole data here, or this. Okay, now there is a problem here. Let me see. What's the problem? ToJSON is not defined on the instance. Okay, why somewhere in my code is ToJSON? Where is that? ToJSON, no results. Okay. Circle structure to JSON, starting at object constructor view. Okay, that's probably because I put this here. So let's just add here initialized. And you can actually take a look at that in here as well, but let me see if I can open it. I don't actually have the view extension here. So I can't do that, but I should install it probably. So initialized is false. Initialized is false but it shouldn't be, because we definitely want this code to run. So why isn't this running? We're going to delivery. This should be initialized true. Or maybe I broke something in the meantime, but this used to work before. So it's not doing the request anymore. Let's check the network tab. In the network tab, I should see the XHR request, and it does that actually, and it's pending. So maybe it's because we're getting an issue here. Okay, that was probably because the Netlify functions were blocked. Let's try to do it again then here. Okay, initialized is now true, and the radio button is set, but here we still have an issue. So let's see what's wrong here. So this should be displayed if option being processed is true, which it definitely shouldn't be. Let's try to output that as well. Okay, this is also true. So now we need to find out what's actually setting that that value. And it's doing the request as well. But that's fine. We don't want the Netlify function to start just yet before I solve this issue. So let's go back here. So initialized is true, so it goes through here. So let's not set this for now. Okay, so if we don't set it, it's correctly set to both to false. So we're not initialized and we're not changing anything. The way how I'm gonna test this is I'm just gonna put here val and new val. I think this works like this. Let me see. Vue.js watch data old value. So in the watch we can get the old values and new values. I'm just gonna try to see from which value to which value it changed. So change age. Nope. I will be better off in the documentation, I think. There it is. So what we can do here is in watch set watchers. So here we got a new question and old question. So new value comes first. So this is a new value. Let's call that only val, that's correct. And this is old value. So what I'm interested in here is to log val and new is gonna be just val. Because I think that the option is just being initialized, it's not changed, right? So, and I'm just gonna do it here once the initialized is true. And for now, I'm just gonna comment this out. so that we don't get any false requests back to Netlify. Okay. Oh, and one last thing I forgot to change is that once I get the data from, oh, not this, but in the component, once I get the data for the first time from the delivery API, I want to set this initialize to true. Okay, let's go here. So this is true, this is false. Now let's see what we have in console. So undefined, that's fine, that's a different thing, but old is nothing, new is interested in booking a room. So this was fired even though the initialized is initialized after this. So this doesn't seem to work well. So how do we do this? So we're back to the square one, back to the same issue here, that the data watcher is running because it's running while the initialization takes place. Okay, we could probably do it this way as well. So it actually creates the connection between this method and the data after the first data are received. Because the first answer didn't work. So let's try this one then. So it's going to be a method, not mount, or this stays the same, but this is not going to be a watch, but it's going to be a method. And here, instead of this initialized, I'm just going to use this part. So this watch, data, and it's not going to be data, but it's going to be option. And it's going to be method option changed. So I'm just going to take this piece of code and put it into methods. Okay, so option loading, that is still there. And this is going to be option changed. Now let's see if this is going to work. So this is still false, false. We don't get anything here. And if I change some value, I still don't get anything. So it doesn't seem to work. But maybe because this should not be optional. Let me see what this actually does. I'm just going to go back into Vue.js documentation. Let's see. In addition to the watch option, you can also use the imperative VM watch API. Let's see that. VM watch, now there is the A. So arguments a.b.c and function with new val and old val. So that's, I'm just looking for what this means. The expression only accepts dot delimited paths. Use a function instead. So no, that's not what I want. callback is fired immediately with the current value of A. Okay, I'm still not sure what I should put there. Detect nested values inside objects, you need to pass in deep true. So maybe I should put there data dot option. Because my object is data dot option. So let's try that, data dot option, and run the option changed. And this still isn't working. So I'm probably doing something wrong here still. So Vue.js watcher example. Tutorial, I like tutorials. Let's see what this guy does. So console log this name. Yeah, this is not what I'm looking for, sorry. No, I'm probably not gonna go anywhere with this. So argument is string function. What does this means? Let's call it the new value and old value. I'm just gonna try a little other thing. If you guys know what I should do, then let me know, because I'm a bit lost here. I'm just gonna try to put here a log, but this should always run, so I'm just gonna put this here. So this should work. This is definitely Vue instance. Dot watch dot. Let's try just data. So test was called. And nothing else is happening. So this does not seem to work. This option changed is correct. Maybe I should await when it's async. Try that makes a difference. Okay, it does. I received an error here. Outside an async function. Yeah, so mounted. Let's try if mounted's gonna work if it's async. Let's try it again. I already fixed that issue. No, still doesn't like it. Outside of an async function, but it is in an async function. But maybe it doesn't like the fact that it's here. Okay, let's try to do it in a different way. I'm just gonna remove this overall. I'm just gonna put here response await fetch. And we're gonna try to do it here without the await. So that makes a difference. Okay. Oh, come on, I already removed the await. Await fetch. Okay. Oh, but that's I think that's fine. So we're doing then response and then accommodation. Just gonna put here a little test to see when this is called, and put here this option. Let's see. And run this again. So the good thing is that the Netlify functions are implemented and working. Okay, undefined, that's all right, that's a different thing. And this is not doing anything. Maybe this should be really option. I'm just gonna do one last test here. Nope, nothing's happening here. Okay. So it seems I'm gonna have to use the watch overall anyway. Just gonna return it back. So let's go back to watch. And that's gonna be option. An async function here. Actually, it doesn't have to be async. Or it does, because there is the await for fetch URL. Okay. Just gonna put a comma here. So what I can do here is actually initialize it to something really dull, like a null. Then I can find out if that is initialized, because once I call this, then response blah blah blah. And even if I don't get the object, so in case the object doesn't exist, let me check what this is going to return when the object does not exist. So if the invitee does not exist, it's going to return 404, but otherwise, if the accommodation doesn't exist, it just returns the response, which is empty. So it's always going to return something. So here, if the option is actually empty string, that's still something different than 0. So what we can do here is check if the option is null. So if the alt value is null, then we're going to return, or actually because that's the initialization. The object is going to be null only in case it's the first initialization. Otherwise, it's always going to be at least empty string. So in that case, I'm going to return, which should work. I'm going to remove all this, and let's see if that's going to work. Okay, it's false, false. And if I change this, the alt is interested in booking room, new is not interested. So this seems to work well. So maybe we can uncomment the rest and it should work, hopefully. And I'm just gonna keep this here just to make sure everything works well. And see what we can do here. So right now it's on this option. I'm just gonna switch it to thank you. And it's doing something. It's not ideal though. Failed to fetch. Access to fetch from origin has been blocked by course policy. No header is present on the requested resource. Okay, let's check if something happened here. No, nothing's here. And a lot of requests happened here for delivery, but that's okay. That's what I was doing here before. And this is OPEC request, so it seems like we're missing course in here, the mode course, but it's here, so that should be fine. So let's actually check the action netlify function, because that should always contain these headers. So I think that's the only thing I changed for the delivery. So here it is. Maybe I missed something. With data, headers, it's everywhere. Allow origin, it's everywhere. So what is wrong here? Access control, allow origin, all. I'm just trying to figure out if oh, maybe this is the problem, but this is delivery. That shouldn't be an issue. We're seeing the issue with action. And with action, it always contains the right headers. So it shouldn't return this error. No access control, allow origin. Let's check. What is the response here? Failed to load response data. Okay, let's output the response. Console log response. But this might actually fail earlier. So then response, console log response. We'll see if this works. Okay, now this stopped working for some reason. Failed to fetch. Connection refused. Okay. Let me start netlify functions again. And let's try to load this again. So this works now. And if I change this, we're getting the same issue, but here we don't even get the console output. Resource. No course. Okay guys, if you have any idea how to fix this, let me know. But I think I'm just missing something here. So the mode is course, that's okay. Just like I have here. Let's try to actually return here right away something with the right header. With 200. We'll see if that works. Okay. Now this still doesn't work. Access to fetch. Add action from origin has been blocked by course policy. But yet I'm doing the same thing. Let's see what Google thinks about that. So fetch course post. Post data. Uploading JSON data. Content. Let's see what we need to do here. Maybe I don't need to do the course stuff. Let's actually try that. That's an easy and quick fix. Maybe that causes an issue, but I don't understand why this should be here on the get and would cause problems on post. But it's an easy thing to try. No, this still doesn't work. And pre-flight response. Access control allow origin. Access control allow origin everything. So that seems to be exactly the same. Headers, headers. Let's try again. So making a post request, console log, option instead of post, only on adding, of course, request become post. So the problem seems to be the custom content type header. Your server needs to be prepared to deal with course, what the server is written in, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's try to remove the content type then. Because we're using JSON parse anyway on the server side. So let's try to do it this way. Yes, I have a question here. Have you looked at the network tab in the debugging console? I have, yes. But the problem is that for the pre-flight requests, I don't get anything here. So for this one, I get the response, that's okay. But for other cases, I don't get anything. But this seems good. Response type course. False status 200, okay. So this looks good. It seems to also work with the status here. So let me change this. I'm just gonna remove the test return. I'm gonna try to run the whole action. Wish me luck, guys. Okay, so it took a while. It didn't remove the status field here, but it seems that the item was successfully changed. Yay! So this works. Now let me fix the status button and we're good to go. So this check should be only displayed in case option is success, which is set here, but also when option being processed is false. Otherwise, I'm just gonna hide this. So let's see. Okay, now it seems to work well. And you see this works well. If we go back here, we're gonna see the right option here, sleep in a tent. So that's exactly what I did here. I'm just gonna change that to, let's try to change these things as well. I think these things should work too, with only the difference that just the option now triggers the update. I would have to do a watcher for these two items as well. So it's not gonna trigger the change, but if I switch here, that's gonna work. So you see, now the node's there, no, it's not there, and here it's not interested. So that works well. And if we go back here, actually, what I can do is I can take a look at all the changes, right? So you see that my change happened, last change that I did happened on 6:34 p.m. And if we compare that with the one version in history, then you see the previous version was sleep in a tent and node was hello world, and the new version is not interested and how many is 2. So yay, that's exactly what I needed. I'm just then gonna remove these test labels and actually make sure that the change is triggered for all of these fields, but it seems that it's working well. So finally, after 4 twitches, we're coming to an end and the component is working. The website seems to be in a good shape now. So I'm just going to be working on this. I'm just going to do the dreadful task on doing the same functionality for the other forms. And I'll see you guys in some of my next twitches about some more interesting topics. Actually, next week I'm going to do a twitch on Wednesday at the same time at 4 p.m. GMT +1. And I've never written any test in JavaScript. Everything I do here in the front end, I'm just doing a try and fail kind of development. So I've never done any unit tests. So I'm gonna get a guest here from content, a senior QA engineer who's gonna show me how to write a unit test. So my first time in my life that I'm gonna be writing a JavaScript unit test. Try to make time for that. That's gonna be fun. I promise you. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday. All right. So thanks for watching and see you next time.